Hey guys, so welcome back. About a week or so ago, I had a conversation with Critical Complex David on Twitter, and he just got into OHM recently, and I've been posting a lot about OHM, and he wanted to learn about what is OHM, how does it work, how do you get involved, what are the kind of the economics behind it. So about a week or so ago, we had agreed to do this, and I'll tell you what, he is such a cool guy. If you do not subscribe to his channel, please go subscribe to his channel. I was subscribed to his channel, been watching his content, I don't know, a few months ago, I think. I think it was a few months ago, long before I started tweeting or doing YouTube or any of that kind of stuff. He's just such a cool guy to talk to, and I had such a fun time talking about OHM. I will say, the in the video, it's almost sort of like really, after I went back and watched it, it's like kind of overly I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Kind of like an interview, but that really wasn't what we had planned on. We just wanted to talk, but it was sort of like I was a little overly stoic just because I take great responsibility in what I say and what I share, and I don't want to share the wrong thing. So it seemed like very professional, but we actually had maybe an even better conversation off camera after we were done that we did not record. And I think if we ever do something like this again, what we'll probably do is just be a little looser. Anytime you're dealing with technical details about how something works, I want to make sure that I'm on point and a little bit more serious. But we actually had just a great conversation off camera and laughed and did all sorts of stuff. Well, really, in the future, if we ever do this again, we'll probably be a little looser. I did want to make some corrections. In the video, I said that the floor price of OHM, the RFV, the risk-free value, whatever terminology you want to use, was $32. I did look it up, and it is actually $35 and about 48 cents. Okay, so a little correction there. And in addition, another correction is one of the newer assets into the Olympus Treasury is LUSD, and I failed to mention that because it is fairly new. So LUSD is actually one of the additional basket of assets that backs OHM that's in its treasury. And also, again, the floor price is actually $35.48 up to this point. Anyway, if you do not subscribe, go subscribe to Critical Complex David, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks a lot.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Passive Income Show with me and Showtime. So we're just here discussing the Olympus DAO token. The ticker is OHM, and so I basically don't know anything about Olympus DAO, and so I wanted to speak with Showtime because he's an avid crypto enthusiast and in the node community. Everybody knows him. He's has a good reputation. And so I trust him and I trust his opinion. So I'm very interested in his perspective on this project. Neither of us are affiliated with this project in any kind of way. We're just speculators, investors, and things of that sort. So he's here to educate me. And so that's what we do, is educate each other. So let's get started, man. Most of the people that know me should know you, but introduce yourself to the world.
Well, yeah, thanks for meeting with me. I actually had followed your YouTube for quite a while before I was doing any tweets or any kind of videos or anything like that. So it's great to speak with you. I mean, I come from a little bit of a different world maybe than some other people in crypto. A former IT professional. I do a lot with my church as far as the tech is concerned. So coming into crypto kind of sounds like a sort of a perfect marriage, but what you realize very quickly is that blockchain is its own sort of world, and yeah, I feel like everybody's sort of on a level playing field. No matter what your background is, no matter where you come from, no matter who you are, what your past mistakes are, or anything like that, we're all sort of on a level playing field in this arena.
That is interesting. That is an interesting perspective, and I agree with you. Crypto has leveled the playing field for a lot of people, and it's very interesting to see how fast things are evolving. For people who didn't have any financial understanding before, and now are learning so much with cryptocurrency. So I do think that is an interesting perspective. But so we're here to talk about the Olympus DAO token, and I'm very interested to learn more about this project. So what I do know about it is I know that you can buy it in Ethereum wallet. So I'm imagining that it is in ERC20.
Yeah, it's an ERC 20 token, and it's just sort of kicking up steam here a little bit, taking up steam, and a lot of people are recognizing it. I mean, even bigger people, it's moving up the charts. This was, we're like a top 70 token now, so it's getting more recognition. So more eyeballs are on this project and trying to figure out what it is. Coming from the node community, I kind of noticed there was this overlap that existed. I'd say specifically with Strong and OHM, but I started slowly trying to learn more about OHM, and I was seeing these terms like Treasury and RFV and POL and all this kind of stuff. So for me, I was just stalking the community a little bit, and I was just trying to take, some pieces from this person, some pieces from that person, some articles, some videos, and just having discussions with the actual policy team, because you can go right in their Discord and have a conversation with the people who have kind of built this thing. So it's really, you can learn a lot that way. So as I was able to put those pieces together, I'd say the puzzle just started to represent a real picture. So I was able to wrap my mind around this and kind of how it worked, and started realizing, hey, if I've had some difficulty understanding this, maybe someone else has. So I thought, what if I took what I know about OHM and kind of explain it in a way that makes sense, and I talk a lot about 80-20 and how 80% of your results typically come from just the small 20% of actions. So I thought, what if I took that concept of OHM and kind of explained that 20% that people really need, and that way they can have the confidence of not just being able to understand it, but owning it. So that's what I did.
Yeah, and that is really interesting. I think that concept makes so much sense because you look at the crypto world and how there's an opportunity to let your money work for you, like, and how simple it is for you to, it's not simple to find a good thing, but it is simple to get involved in these projects when maybe 20 years ago you'd have to be really connected to get involved in something like this, especially with creating nodes on a network, like pre-search and things like that. So I think it's just an incredible opportunity here now where we're at, and just moving forward. It's so obvious that crypto it's not about it being here to stay, because that's already been set in stone. It's about what it can do for people, and the idea that people can just get involved and like when we get involved with these networks, we're basically making the network work. And so I just think that's one of the most interesting perspectives. And just reflecting on what you said about the 80-20, because I did see that video you made, and I do understand what you're saying. So that is a great perspective, in my opinion. So moving on a little forward. So I think we kind of jumped the gun a little bit, not jumped the gun, but ERC20. So, all right, what is OHM from your perspective? What is it? Explain to the people and me and myself, what is OHM?
Sure. Well, I think it's important to differentiate some terms, so that we have a kind of a clear understanding. So most people here probably know what a DAO is, but just for those who don't, a DAO is basically a self-governance system in crypto where changes to the code of the protocol, so in this case OHM, can only take place via a vote in the governance. Okay, so you join the DAO basically by just owning the crypto. So in this case, you're part of the DAO, the Olympus DAO, by owning OHM. So from that perspective, Olympus DAO really isn't any different from any other DAO. OHM, the protocol underneath the purview of Olympus DAO, is, however, different. So kind of the ultimate goal is to make OHM a reserve currency. Okay, that's their sort of mission statement here. So in trying to accomplish this, I think they've taken aspects of what real money should be, like what is real money? Things like a unit of account, a medium of exchange, things that are missing from our current fiat currency. They've applied that to OHM. So one way they've managed to do this is to back each OHM with a basket of assets. So currently every OHM is backed by some DAI, that's a stable coin, some wrapped Ethereum, sushi, Frax, some liquidity pool tokens. So you've got this basket of assets that are backing each OHM that ever gets minted. So it's not pegged in the sense that it's actually mimicking the price of those assets. It's just backed up with those assets. So that's a key difference. What I would say is our currency, the US dollar is, as well as a lot of other currencies around the world, used to be backed by gold as we know it. So, we used to have a gold standard, which meant you couldn't just go out and print money whenever you felt like it, unless you had the gold reserves in the vault in order to back every $1 that you printed. Obviously we've gone way far away from that, and our fiat currencies are sort of useless. That's what got a lot of us into crypto, I would say, among a lot of other things. So when I look at OHM, what I see is I sort of liken OHM to the gold standard of crypto. Okay, so every token is backed by a standard, or we'll call it a basket of assets. And, they've managed to incentivize the growth of their treasury. So these assets go into a treasury that backs OHM. It does several other things, but one of the things is it backs OHM. And they've incentivized the growth of that. And it appears to me like they've taken all of the necessary, I'd say, economic, financial dilemmas, we'll get into that later, as well as some human psychology into account when they've built the economics around it.
I think it's very interesting that you compared it to the gold standard and not to gold itself. One thing I want to point out that I learned just now was that OHM is backed by a basket of currencies. And so that is something I want to look more into. So being backed by these currencies, like what is the difference between being backed and being pegged?
So being pegged would be akin to DAI, for example. So DAI has kind of a basket too, USD coin being one of those. Stable coins are typically pegged to a fiat currency, so $1. So, we all know Tether is probably not really truly backed in their reserves like they say they're going to, but there's a reserve and there's backing. So you have like a backing up sort of, I would say almost akin to like an insurance policy, okay? That this is what it's really worth, and we're proving it because we own the underlying asset, sort of like collateral, if you will. And you actually have a pegging, which is no matter what the price is. So if we were to peg it to gold, no matter what the price is, it's going to mimic the price of gold. Might be small fluctuations, but it's going to mimic that price. So it's actually backed, but there's a sort of this ability for it to float above that value for the real market to determine what its value actually is. So there's a supply and demand aspect to it as well.
Okay. So being backed is actually more solid than being pegged.
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on what you're trying to do, right? If you're trying to create a stable coin, you need to be pegged because you have to have that consistency of that $1 for one coin. In this case, they're trying to create a robust, strong currency like our currency once was, where it was backed. And we knew, hey, you got $1. I don't know. I wasn't alive when this worked, but basically the concept is you had $1, you can go and get the gold for it. Okay. Or there was silver certificates back in the day as well. It was a robust currency because you knew that there was something back in a tangible physical asset that was back in that currency, unlike what we have now.
Right. I agree with that. So, yeah. So like, I think it's interesting that, so OHM is building, they're creating a stable currency.
It at some point is going to have some sort of equilibrium, stable, I'd say range, but they're not particularly building a stable coin. They're trying to rebuild a reserve currency.
Oh, so they're trying to rebuild and make a stable dollar that is more solidified and more reliable than what we have today in fiat currency, basically.
Yeah, I'd say take the concept of DeFi and marry it with the gold standard.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I did see one insert on the website where it explained the Olympus DAO network as trying to create a decentralized reserve federal bank or decentralized reserve bank. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of makes sense. Yeah, so that's sort of true. Yeah, they're trying to build that type of system. I think really what they're trying to do is take, what did our what did our currency used to be? It used to be a unit of account, a medium of exchange. It was transportable. It was all these things that made it real money. Unfortunately, we went far away from that, and it's less than maybe even a currency. It's currency. It's not really money. So they've said, okay, that's what actually made our dollars money. So let's take that. Let's bring it into crypto, because what a lot of protocols are doing is they are pegging, say, a stable coin to something, but they're not really, I mean, if it's backed, it's not very strong. And we don't really have this ability to sort of invest in this, just because it's always going to be a dollar. I mean, you can earn yield on it, yeah, but the thing that's nice about OHM is it's allowed to float above the price that it's backed to. So if it's back to X amount, it's allowed to float above that amount. That's a premium, of course, but you're getting the yield in exchange for that premium, that high yield, which is kind of what's driving the price. And it's like, okay, let's take this and let's actually marry it to a strong backing. So now we have the concept of true money in the cryptocurrency world.
Awesome. So the idea is to make a more hard dollar, a more hard, stable, realistic dollar that as always has a true value with proof. Okay, so
Correct.
All this makes sense. All right, so I'm just more interested. All right, the first thing that just highlighted in my head was the idea that there's a basket of currencies backing this network or this token. And the idea is to create a network that resembles the gold standard. So that's the two things I've learned so far. And so I want to go ahead and ask you the most important question that I'm pretty sure everybody wants to know is, like, how are they able to give a return of 7,300% annual percentage yield?
Yeah, that is the $8 million question. So we'll go back to the 80-20 rule again. So as we know, Pareto's principle, 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. So I'm going to get into kind of the 80-20 of OHM. And to me, that's the Treasury. I'd say study how the Treasury works. And if, you know, what it is, where to get their inflows from, you know, how they generate revenue, that's sort of the, I'd say the secret sauce behind OHM is the Treasury. So the way they're able to achieve this type of yield is they got this Treasury, right? It's sort of what I would call like this massive war chest, if you will. And they've got reserves that they keep inside of that Treasury. To date, it's a little bit more than $300 million in the Treasury. Okay, so the way they build this Treasury, several layers deep. So one of the ways they're able to build this is they have a system called bonding. Simply put, bonding is basically the way they incentivize those who invest in OHM to grow the Treasury. So rather than the developers or those who are leading the charge trying to grow it, which they do, get into that in a second, they're actually able to get the investors to grow it. And that helps everybody. So it's actually pretty brilliant the way they're able to do this. So the bonding system kind of works like this. You go to the bonding page, you can see that right on the dashboard. Okay, you'll see all these list of different assets. So they say, okay, tell you what, you give us the assets we need. We'll put those assets into the Treasury. So it's a win for them. I'd say it's a win for all of us if the Treasury is growing. But in exchange, they say, okay, now that you gave us those assets, what we're going to do in exchange is we're going to give you OHM at a cheaper price, lower than where you'd buy it on the market price. So if it's, what are we, like 800 right now, it'd be like 770, something like that. So that's the exchange. You give them the assets, they give you a cheaper OHM. So it kind of is a win for all of us. So that grows, that's one way that they grow the Treasury, through the bonding system. The assets that are used in the Treasury is where it gets kind of interesting. So those are used in a number of ways. So they pay the DAO's expenses, number one. A big chunk of that goes into providing liquidity. So the interesting thing is Olympus owned its own liquidity. So without getting into that, that's like a really big deal. You got a lot of, I don't want to call them automatic market makers, but you got people that provide liquidity that pull it out because maybe they want to sell, or you got third parties that have to be incentivized. They own 99.98% of their own liquidity. So that's a big deal. So part of the Treasury goes to that. A lot of it goes to backing each OHM, as we talked about. So they can't mint an OHM without it being backed. You've got emissions rates. You've got raising something called the RFV, which stands for risk-free value. The easiest way to picture that is that's basically the floor price of how high OHM is backed to. I believe we're backed up to about $32, if I'm not mistaken, of assets. So that floor slowly goes up over time to raise. So then theoretically, it could not drop below that price. It could, but it'd get bought up really quickly. So it's this, I would answer you by saying it's this massive war chest in Treasury, and that continues to grow. And that's able to provide this type of yield. I would say keep in mind that the revenue that comes from bonding, it also comes from where they take the assets in the Treasury and they go out to DeFi platforms. This was all voted on. These are all whitelisted protocols, Aave, XSushi, I believe CVX, and they earn yield on the Treasury assets. Okay, so theoretically, if nobody ever bonded, they would still earn revenue because they've taken the Treasury gold standard model, right? And they've married it with the yields that we're accustomed to in DeFi. So because of this use of the Treasury, the inflows, what comes into the Treasury is always higher than what goes out. That allows them to continue giving out those type of yields.
This sounds very revolutionary. Like this sounds like something that federal banks around the world would probably want to have control of, you know,
Yeah,
or possibly want to adopt, because maybe they didn't, you know, you think of things like this and you're saying, you think like, maybe they're going to want to shut them down. Maybe they're not going to want them to do that. But the thing is, if they look at it and they see it as a threat, they also see it as a potential win because they know they don't have it and they couldn't build it. So if someone else come along and build it, maybe it'll be a better idea for them to adopt it rather than try to destroy it. Because I mean, it sounds very, it seems like they have a very a structured network. If they're building a gold standard, a decentralized, you know, basically a decentralized gold standard network, you know what I mean? That's incredible. I think that's really, really huge.
Yeah.
And it could be revolutionary, you know. This could be one of the things that changed the way we finance and the way we move money.
Yeah, yeah. You know, one thing we know about governments is they don't innovate. Okay, they adopt. So
exactly,
it's the main reason why people say, well, they're not going to allow cryptocurrency. No. They want it. They want it because they can't build it. That's the concept. All these protocols, they can go down the list and name them. You know them as well as I do. Okay, they're going to adopt it because it's much easier to adopt something than it is to destroy it.
Yeah, I mean, if it took Elon Musk to come along and build the correct rocket ships to get to Mars, then obviously they couldn't do it.
I wouldn't trust them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, right? So, I mean, OHM is very interesting. I seen that it had a little pullback. Yeah. So can you explain a little bit about? I think I read something. I mean, I haven't done really research, so sure. I'm still learning here, right?
Sure.
I think I read something about the price not being able to go so low or below a certain point. Can you explain on that what you know about that?
Sure. So of all those purposes that the Treasury has, one of them, like I said, is the what we call the RFV. You see this term, nobody ever really tells you what the term means. Is risk-free value. What it basically means is that's the floor price. So I believe we're at $32 and some change right now. Basically, that means that OHM is backed with all those basket of assets up to $32. Okay, so the yield obviously is causing that premium. Okay, so it could theoretically drop below the backing. So if the backing's 32, it could theoretically drop below that. Slim chance of it happening, I would say, number one. But I think something like that, if it ever did happen, would get bought up so quickly. If you know something's backed up to a certain amount, I mean, you'd be crazy not to buy it. If it were to continue to drop, eventually the protocol will burn tokens to raise it back up. That would eventually happen. We would need to drop pretty low. I think we need to drop to about $1 for that to really happen, but it would theoretically happen. So one of two things would happen. If the price fell below the backing, the floor price, we'll say. Number one, either people would buy it up. I'd be one of them. Or number two, the protocol would make sure it goes back up. Okay, so the cool thing is, you look at a lot of these cryptos, you don't really know where they're going. We kind of have an idea. We got technical analysis, we got 4-year halvings, all this kind of stuff. With OHM, that floor price just continues to rise over time. Okay, it's going to keep going up. So one day, we don't know when, as the Treasury continues to grow faster and faster, this will also speed up as well. You're going to have a floor price of $100. It's going to be 150, and it's going to be 200 to 250 and 300. So eventually that's going to be the floor, and it would never drop below that. So the cool thing is that backing just increases over time, and it makes it just a very sustainable growth protocol. Right now we're kind of trading a little bit. No, I shouldn't say a little bit. We're trading at quite a premium from the backing price, but one day that backing is going to catch up to where we are now. Just don't know how long it'll take.
So what about the token supply? Like I see that there's a circulating supply, and then I see there's a total supply, but how do we find the maximum supply?
Yeah, so people in crypto are not going to like this answer, but theoretically it's infinite. Okay, because OHM is inflationary. And I know that sounds bad because most of us probably got, involved in crypto because we have an inflationary currency right now. And we wanted something with a fixed limited supply with deflationary characteristics. I would say there are certain instances where inflation for the token supply makes sense as long as you have the economics behind it. I'll explain that really briefly. So we voted on something called OIP 18, and that you can go into the dashboard, you can click governance, you can see all these things we voted on. And that was the proposal to drop the yield as inflation goes up. And that was to make the protocol as long-term sustainable as possible. So as tokens are handed out to stakers, that causes something called emissions, and that's just a fancy word for inflation. Basically, the yield drops when inflation increases. So this actually, in turn, believe it or not, creates a higher price per OHM. So the policy developers, the policy team and developers, I should say, behind OHM, I feel like they really took the human psychology element into it. So when you have a significantly high yield, there's protocols like this that exist right now, really super high yield. Most people don't feel the need to have to buy as many tokens because you've got this high yield that kind of feels like a security blanket. So this sort of reduces the buying pressure, but it increases the selling pressure. And those same people will in turn start to take more profits because they believe that they'll easily make up the loss with the high yield. So they're more willing to sell, less willing to buy. But if you drop the yield over time, people kind of believe now that they have to buy more tokens to stake it in order to get that same return that they just dropped from. So they're less likely to take profits as well. So this increases buying pressure, this reduces selling pressure, and it kind of ultimately causes the price per OHM to go up over time. So the decrease in yield over time, though, also means that the inflation will decrease in the rate that it goes up over time, because if the yield's dropping, all things being equal, okay, you'll be minting fewer and fewer OHM tokens to hand out to stakers and bonders and so forth. So the inflation starts to slowly go up over time as the yield's going down. So while inflation, it sounds like a bad thing in crypto, many times it is. Olympus, I feel like, has really created a really intelligent, economic system surrounding it. So it kind of makes sense in this instance.
It's so amazing what can be done with these smart contracts.
Absolutely.
Like you can almost build like almost anything that we've done in the past hundreds of years, as far as communication, interaction, no, not just, communication with messaging, but like transactions between cash and buying things, selling things, supply chains, all kind of things. It's just like everything's becoming to where it can be artificially created, as like you just said. It's like they're taking human psychology and making a system that mimics it, right?
Right.
And that's just crazy.
I mean, you're going to see a lot of jobs go away. We know this already, but
yeah,
I mean, you got NFTs, so now you can own theoretically a physical piece of something, whether that's art, whether that's a home, whether that's a piece of land or whatever. So now you can theoretically, once that's adopted well enough, you can buy that on the blockchain. You can have a smart contract mimic what a realtor does. Okay, you can have driverless cars, which already exist. One day it'll be driverless buses and driverless trucks. Okay. All on the blockchain. Okay. So there's no accidents and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is the way we're going. And I think we're just seeing barely the warm up of it.
Right. Just imagine an NFT that represents a business. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you can sell a business, or it could be, to make it more interesting, have multiple NFTs represent that business. Like maybe 100 NFTs, you have all 100, you own the business, right? Like,
Well, I think we'll start to see the stock market equities will all be fractionalized. They'll be tokenized. There will be a token on the blockchain that represents your ownership. Shares are just partial ownership of a company. So there's no reason you couldn't transact that back and forth with a super fast system. Okay. Something maybe like XRP, for example, have an NFT that represents the ownership, moves it back and forth, costs pennies, does it instantly.
I
I
wonder
think
if
that's where
that's
we're going.
possible for them is that possible? Like, say a certain basket of stocks, and you make an NFT that represent those stocks, ownership of those stocks.
Well, if you have an NFT and there's only one of the NFT, you just have to continue minting them for additional, say fractionalized ownership. So if you can only go at a certain decimal point, you would just have to create that many NFTs. There would just be one NFT that would represent, that small amount of ownership. That's how I would think. I think most of this is just going to be adoption. How fast can we adopt this? I think we're falling way behind. I don't know if that's by mistake, but I think the big question is how fast can we actually move in this direction? How fast? Because the tech's there, right? The tech's there. These companies that are innovating, the innovations there. This is all there. We just need to actually take it and utilize it.
Mm-hmm. It's a matter of getting industries involved at this point, because you have the music industry starting to get involved with NFTs. Art is definitely involved. You have the art community, and the art world. I'm noticing real estate slowly getting involved. So, I mean, it is taking over the world, man. Like, it's just a matter of time. So, one more thing we're gonna touch on before we wrap it up, man.
Sure.
How can I explain to I know because you walked me through it, but help some people understand how they can get involved with staking OHM and earning 7,300% annual percentage yield.
All right. Well, I'm not going to give a typical answer, but I will give an answer. So I'm a big believer, first of all, that you should understand what you own. Okay. So for instance, many people, they're looking to social media personalities, they're looking to influencers, all sorts of other people to make their decision. As an aside, I don't consider myself an influencer. People will say, hey, you're an influencer. I don't influence anybody. I'm only influenced by one person, and that's Jesus. But I don't influence anybody. I just say, hey, sort of like this. I look at it this way. You got two boxers about ready to fight. What typically happens? You have the former heavyweight champion will come in and he'll shake the hands of both fighters. So the reason he's doing that is because he's saying, hey, I've been where you're at. I know the pain you're going to go through. I know all the stuff you're going to go through, and you're going to make it on the other side. That's essentially what he's saying. He's a witness to their fight. So I kind of look at that as what I'm doing. I say, hey, I know the pain of trying to figure all this out. I'm here to help you get through to the other side. Okay. So as far as how to get involved, I believe that to get involved with anything, especially crypto, you do a couple of things first before we get into how to actually buy. Do your own research. You and I don't offer financial advice. Okay. Do your research through your 80-20 filter. Find that 20% that you need to get 80% of the way. Make that decision and have confidence in that decision. I feel so many people, they're looking to influencers, not just for the research, but they're looking to them for that confidence. And I instead say, hey, look in yourself. And I think that's why people move in and out of position so quickly, because they got their research and confidence from these other people. So when these other people start saying negative things, it's like, oh, well, gee, maybe I should dump this now. So it's really important for me personally, the very first thing I'd say is know what you own. Know it so well that I could wake you up out of a deep sleep and say, quick, tell me what OHM is. And you can explain it. Right. That's kind of like my tongue in cheek sort of like litmus test to know whether you really own something, or know what you own, I should say. So you're ready to make that decision. Okay. Maybe it's not to buy. That's fine. Okay. You want to buy. There's a few places you can buy it. I don't recommend BitTrue, but you could buy it on BitTrue. They have really bad liquidity. So that's like a last resort kind of place. Most likely you'll want to swap it on OHM on Uniswap, Sushi Swap. You can also use the built-in swap feature inside of MetaMask. Okay, you're going to go to the Olympus dashboard. 2 transactions. First one's going to be to approve the staking. Second one's going to be to actually do the staking itself. So after the staking finishes, you refresh your dashboard. Okay, your OHM now turns into SOHM. It just means staked OHM. They just basically they give you an SOHM in return on your dashboard, just so you can't like pull it out unless you unstake it, right? So from that point on, you're earning, you're auto compounding. And you know, I would also encourage people to check out a calculator that I made. You can see where you'd be, you know, from now to 3 years in the future.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna need you to help me figure out how to use that calculator, because I haven't figured it out yet, but I've seen it, and I'm gonna get you to send me that and figure that out. And if you want, we can leave. Do you have it? Like, is it a link that you have to the calculator?
I have a link. I'm going to end up making a video on it. It was just this little thing in my, it was kind of a side thing in my main OHM video. And then I'm realizing, wait a minute, I can build on this. So I started building on it, and I was updating just people on Twitter. And I thought I probably need to make a whole video about how to use this. So there is a link to it, and I'll get that to you. And eventually, you know, in the next week or so, I'll make a video on how to.
Well, we're going to leave that link in the description for the viewers. So if they wanted, if they were interested in using it. And so just give a quick, brief understanding of what the calculator is for, and how, you know, what you can do with it. You don't have to break it all the way down if you don't want, you know?
Sure. Yeah. So because we voted on OIP 18, we have a reduction in the yield as the inflation goes up. Okay. As we know, inflation goes up because you're staking. Okay. So the question is, it used to be, okay, we were kind of in this range of 15,000 to 16,000% yield before this. And we were able to say, okay, you run this calculation, this is how much you'll make. But now if the yield's dropping, it kind of messes with the math a little bit. So how do you kind of figure this out? So I thought to myself, well, that math is very tricky to figure out. But what if I could make a worst case scenario? Matter of fact, a worse than worst case scenario. So if you win in this scenario, you're going to win even bigger in reality. So I thought, well, let's just keep it simple. So I said, hey, let's just drop off, you know, 0.5% every 30 days. Figured, okay, I mean, that's doable. That's unrealistic, because as time goes on, yield goes down, inflation doesn't go up as fast. So this is not even a realistic scenario. But if you win in this, you will win in reality. So kind of the concept behind it was, let me show you an even worse than worst case for the cynic among us, okay? That you can win with OHM. You stake this amount every 30 days. It'll show you what you'll make. That carries over to year 2. That carries over to year 3. Then it has a total value amount.
Cool. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. So that will, you know, help me a little bit when I do click on that link again. And so, man, I appreciate that, man. You just schooled me, man. So I learned about, first of all, I understand now that OHM, the goal is to create what is, or has created, a decentralized gold standard a network that is actually backed by a basket of currencies. And the way they achieve this yield is by a process called bonding. And so are real bonds involved with that when you say bonding?
It's just a term. It's actually, I wish they'd changed the term, to be honest. Other protocols call this minting, but no, it's essentially, I think it's just a word they chose. So yeah, you got bonding. They also take the Treasury assets and they will put those on DeFi platforms and earn yield. So that's 2 ways that I'm aware of. There might be more, 2 ways that they're earning revenue coming into the Treasury.
So I think that about wraps it up, man. I've learned a good bit that I didn't know. I hope the audience learned. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We will be uploading this video on both of our channels, so all of our followers and subscribers can check it out. And as my friend here mentioned a minute ago, we are not influencers, we are educators. I consider myself an educator. I love to educate people. I spend a lot of time doing one-on-one with people and trying to get them to understand what cryptocurrency is and how they can make it work for them. So that is basically why we had this conversation, because I found OHM to be a very interesting project just because of the returns. And I've been watching Showtime for a few weeks now, maybe a few months. and he's been speculating on this project, and he's someone I trust, and I honor his perspective. So I just thought it'd be very good to share with you me actually learning about OHM on camera, and we can share that with you guys. And we've got his perspective, which was really great, really incredible. He gave us a lot of his energy, and I just appreciate you so much, man.
Hey, appreciate you. I'm a subscriber. Anybody who's watching this, if you're not subscribed to Critical Complex, you got to go subscribe. I was watching this guy before I had my channel, before I was tweeting any of this kind of stuff. So he's a guy he's got, I mean, you had the CEO from Presearch on, you got some really great people on there. You're covering a lot of really great stuff. So, you know, very humbled to be able to join this with you.
Thank you, man. So we're going to end it right there, guys. Salute. See you later.